Today we're going to talk about codominance. The prefix co means together, and for codominance, it's telling us that the traits are going to both show up in the phenotype anytime you have both alleles for each of those two traits or genes in the genotype. So for example, up here we have a bluebird, so it has the dominant blue trait, and we have a white bird who looks kind of a yellow color, and it is a dominant trait as well, and they are going to be codominant, and we wind up with a blue and white, or a little bit yellowish off-white bird, because the traits, neither one is going to overpower the other one, so they both show up in the phenotype of the offspring. Same thing here, we have black bear, white bear, and we get black and white bears when we cross them. So codominance, both are showing up in the phenotype. By the end of this lesson, we need to be able to complete and interpret Punnett squares that involve codominant alleles. You're going to have lots of capital letters today. Also be able to determine the outcome of genetic crosses when you have these codominant alleles. So we're taking what we know so far about dominant and recessive traits and filling in the Punnett squares and determining probabilities and all of that. And we're taking it a step further now and looking at what happens when you have two traits and neither one's more dominant than the other, so they both show up. Here's another great example of that. You take a Siamese cat and you cross it with a Persian cat, and you wind up with something that has characteristics of both. So you've got the Siamese coloring, but the longer, fluffier fur from the Persian cat when you get the Himalayan cat from that cross. Neither one has traits that are more dominant, so you get a mixture of both showing up. So again, codominance occurs when you have two alleles or forms of the gene that are equally dominant and both show up in the phenotype. Here we have some cows, white cow, a reddish or brown cow, and you get the cow that has both colors in its fur. Another great example of this is blood type. Type A and type B, those are caused by the A allele and the B allele for blood. Neither one's more dominant. And when you get a copy of A and a copy of B from the two parents, you wind up with AB blood type. Instead of having A or B, you actually have AB because neither one is more dominant to dominate the other one. This can happen in flowers. And again, you get a phenotype that shows both traits. We have a white flower and a red flower, and the offspring are going to be red and white. Sometimes if you write it and you don't put the and in there, it can mean something different. For example, if you have blue-green is a color, kind of like teal. We're talking about codominance where you would have blue parts and green parts, not a blue-green mix of color. That's something different we'll talk about in a second. So here's an example. This should be the first question or one of the questions on your codominance practice. You have merpeople, and they've got tail colors with B for blue, dominant, and G for green, and it's dominant, and they follow these codominance inheritance rules. We need to figure out the possible genotypes and phenotypes. So take a second, think about what those letters would be like, the possibilities for inheriting those. Remember, you get two traits, one from mom, one from dad. So what are the possible combinations you could get? Hopefully, you thought of the fact that you could get two capital B's, which would result in a blue tail. You could get two capital G's, which would result in a green tail, or you could get a blue trait and a green trait, which would mean that you would have a tail that has blue and green in it. For example, this has a tail that has blue and green. So this picture here would be that capital B, capital G for the genotype to give you this phenotype of the blue and green showing up together. This can happen in chickens too. We have black chicken, white chicken, capital W's for the white one, capital B's for the black one. When you make your Punnett squares, same thing where you bring the top letter down, the side letter in, and you do that for each of your squares. And you wind up with a chicken that has some white on its feathers and some black. Sometimes we get traits that are incomplete dominance, and you wind up getting a blend of the colors. For example, if you have incomplete dominance, you're going to have a red flower and a white flower. They're going to blend together and become pink. So codominance, they're both showing up, co meaning together, and incomplete, it's like something couldn't completely take over, so they wind up blending together. So I am a Harry Potter fan, along with Star Wars and Wonder Woman. So here's a Harry Potter question for you. If the dragons in Harry Potter have fire power alleles, F for strong and F prime, no fire, that follow incomplete dominance, what are the phenotypes for each of these dragon fire genotypes? So F is strong fire, the F prime is no fire. So what would be your strength for the fire breathing? Go ahead and take a guess, fill it in your notes. This is outside the one ride at Universal Studios. Great ride. All right, so if you have 2 capital Fs, you're going to have strong fire. If you have 2 F primes, you're going to have no fire. If you get one of each, you're kind of like medium fire, moderate fire, however you want to say that. And that's because these two are blending together. Incomplete, they're blending. So we said that blood types are a great example of codominance. They're also a great example of a gene that has multiple alleles. We usually look at either having a dominant or recessive gene or allele for each gene. Occasionally we do have some that have multiple alleles, and blood type is one of them, where there's 3 different alleles you can inherit. You can get an A, a B, or an O. And remember, if you get an A and a B, you actually have blood type AB. So O is recessive, just like we've been talking about. So if you get 2 A's, you have blood type A. If you get an A and an O, O is recessive, so the A takes over and you still have A blood. If you get an A and a B, you have blood type AB because they're both showing up. If you get 2 B's, you have B. You get B and the recessive O, that B takes over and you get B blood type. The only way that to have O blood type is to have 2 O's. All right, go ahead and take a second and fill this in. We have blood type A and blood type B. Looks like A is heterozygous. So go ahead and fill that in on one side. And B is homozygous. So you've got 2 capital B's for that. You're going to fill in your Punnett square. Don't forget to put the parents on the outside, a single letter for each box on the outside, and then fill in your boxes here for the children. Pause the video if you need another couple seconds. Let's check and see how you did. So we put AO on one side, BB on the other. If you have these switched, that's fine. You could have put AO here and BB there, and it still would have been fine. Make sure that you have the right number of boxes here as we go through these answers. We should have AB in 2 boxes and BO in 2 boxes, because again, we bring down, we bring over. So we wind up with the possibility of an AB blood type and a B blood type, because remember, O is recessive. So the genotype is BO, but the O is recessive, so B takes over. So the phenotypes are AB for the AB genotype and B for the BO genotype.